One of the best things about the whole digital era and teacher-led teaching is you can teach in such amazing places like this. This is why I love it. It's so exciting, this virtual world, to be able to engage with your students anywhere you want. Or maybe I'm not just anywhere, maybe I'm just using a green screen. And that in itself is very exciting, and that's what I want to share with you in this lesson. So you can have so much fun when it comes to green screen. All of a sudden you feel like you're a Hollywood producer. And it's amazing because the technology is really, really quite simple. So all you need essentially is a green screen. And in fact, if you're using Zoom, Zoom is very clever. It'll work with any background essentially. If it's a plain background, it's going to be a lot better because otherwise you'd intend to vanish into the background. So try and find a plain background or just get a simple green screen. You can buy one, and I've actually got a link in the notes where you can grab one really nice and cheap. And sometimes it does help also to have a box light or some other lighting because the way the green screen works is it has to separate the background from you. But again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Essentially, a plain background and some lighting, and even if you don't have the lighting, it'll typically work. But I want to show you a little bit about using green screens and how they can be quite fun and effective and how you can use them here in Zoom. This is how you can now start to make use of green screens. So in Zoom, you will notice that there is an option next to video where you can pop it up and you can choose your video settings, or just above it, you can see choose a virtual background. Now, at the moment, I've got none. Essentially, you can now choose to change that to a virtual background that you have uploaded. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment. If you have a green screen, you select that option. It just makes it easier and better. Some computers, like the one I'm working on, requires that because the processing without a green screen is a lot more intense. And so if it doesn't work on your laptop or on your computer, get a green screen, you'll find that it can easily handle it. Or as I just said, you can find something that's just a plain background. Now, all you need to do now is upload a background that you want to use. And depending on the computer that you're using, you can even use a background that is a moving background, like a little video clip that repeats. But you want to choose a background. And there are many out there. You can quite simply go to Google and Google Zoom background, and you're going to find many, many backgrounds. So there's just really, really hundreds that you can choose from. What I've found to be quite useful is if you are going to choose a background, try and consider it as a background that makes sense sometimes. It doesn't have to be. I mean, obviously, if you're going to choose a background like the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, it's pretty obvious that I'm not there. But sometimes you want to create it to be a little bit more realistic. So, for example, this one in a coffee shop is potentially real. It is, possible that I am in that coffee shop. And so if you look at that, it does look, well, there's a person there, so maybe I'll just move it all across so you can't see that person. And I've actually used this in presentations, live presentations, and people think that, yeah, you're in a coffee shop. It just makes it look a little bit more real. So do consider that when you're choosing your virtual background. You'll see here is an option, and it talks about at the bottom here, mirroring my background. Now, you'll notice if you look carefully, it just switches it. And the reason for that is it's to do with your hands and how you're doing it. And by mirroring it, essentially, the person on the other side is still going to see it the same, but it's actually for your own good. Because otherwise, typically what happens is when you raise your left hand, because you've got a camera, it's actually flipped. And so it looks like your right hand is going up, which is quite confusing. There are many, many places where you can get hold of Zoom backgrounds. And as I said, you can simply Google them. But one of the great places you can go is to Canva. Canva's free. Canva is, and I speak about this in other lessons in the ACT course. We talk about how we use Canva to support pedagogies like creation and chaos. Really great with infographics, and we've got lessons on those as well. But you can simply go to Canva and just type in, Zoom background. And you'll find that it comes up with a whole host of exciting backgrounds. And the idea is these backgrounds have been formatted to the right size. Now, what's really nice about using Canva for your Zoom backgrounds is, unlike ones that you may find elsewhere on the web, they typically are images that have been preset and you've got to use them. Whereas the Canva ones, as you'll notice some here are actually animated as well, you can edit these, which is really exciting. So you can choose any of these backgrounds And again, as I said, if you want to choose that are more realistic, you need to, obviously not under the ocean, but it depends what you're trying to achieve. So I want to show you something that I did that was quite fun. And I used this one here, the 6 classroom rules, and reworked it. Now, using Canva really is quite simple. So I've chosen that background and called it the 4E education rules. And here it is. I've edited it. And then what I've done is I've duplicated the slide and added the next rule, the next rule, the next rule. And I've created 4 images. So these images are the right size, the right proportions for your background. And I have now created those. So all I now need to do, quite simply, is download these. Right, so I've downloaded those, and they have been placed in a zip file, and once they unzip, they will be in a folder. Now, what I can do is I can go to choose my virtual backgrounds, and when you want to add a new background, all you need to do is click on the little plus sign, and it'll allow you to upload new backgrounds. So here are the ones that I've just added, and I want to get them in the right order. You'll see why. So even though 4's at the top there, we can just change it on that order. Right, so I want them to be like that, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to open those 4. So those 4 are going to be brought in, and so you'll see them here. You'll notice it's backwards, and that looks backwards. So in this case, I don't want it like that. I'm going to remove the mirroring. Right, now I want to show you what is a really cool thing that you can do. And why this is particularly cool is that it's a different way of now presenting. And so typically when you present, you're presenting using possibly just yourself, or you might be presenting using a slideshow. And so as you well know, you can use Zoom, you can share your screen, and you can have a PowerPoint show that you share. Another really fun way of doing it is to share, but using backgrounds, using virtual backgrounds. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to talk about the 4E education rules. And so the first rule of e-education is to do with activity. If you don't have activity, you're not going to have this connection. You're not going to have the engagement you need. So rule number 1 to be effective as an e-educator is activity. Now, there pops up the next one. And so it's really cool because it's like it's appearing behind me. And so the next rule is connection. Yes, and I talk about e-education and the connected island and that part of the island and that zone, but it's also that human is connection. And it's vital that as a teacher, as an instructor, you are connecting both technologically, but also emotionally with your students. Very important. The third rule, think beta. This is such an important thing. You don't have to get it right. It doesn't have to be perfect. Be prepared to make mistakes. Be prepared to try new things. Really important. And then education rule number 4, have fun. That's what I'm doing at the moment, having fun. But isn't this such a cool way in which you can now present? And so all I've done is I've actually used my virtual background as a way to present. And so it's such an easy way and a cool little hack that you can now actually, in a sense, show your slides by changing your background. So virtual backgrounds are really, really powerful. They solve a whole lot of problems because if you've got something rather distracting behind you, which you don't want, a virtual background helps you with that. And so using the concept of the green screen and replacing with the virtual background opens up a whole lot of opportunities for exciting ways of keeping things interesting, having fun, but also being effective as a teacher.